All right, hello Trade Pros. This is Victoria from Trade Pro Academy. And in today's YouTube video, we've got something special in terms of Sierra charts. We're going to be going through a lot of the studies showing you guys what Sierra charts has to offer, and we're also going to be going through the volume profile. So the volume profile is going to be the main center of attention today, how we use it in Sierra charts and how it is effective, different ways to use it, different ways to get it in Sierra charts, but we're also just going to be focusing on a lot of the studies and potential studies that Sierra charts does offer. So Sierra charts is a very vast platform and it does have a lot of options, and we're going to go through some of our favorites. If you guys are new to this channel, if you guys don't want to miss any more videos, hit that subscribe button down below, drop a like, and tell us what you want to see next. So after this intro, let's just go ahead and dive into this video. We'll see you guys shortly. So Sierra Charts is a very, very unique platform in the sense that it has endless options and customization tools that we have previously seen in some of our Sierra chart videos. On the screen in front of you, you can see that this is a range bar chart that we have helped you construct in a previous video. This is the most basic chart. It's just a candlestick chart based on a 1-point range or a 4-tick range on the S&P 500 futures market. You can see it's super bland, doesn't really tell you much, and that is where the studies come in. Now, you can leave this chart as is like this and use some of the tools. Maybe you want to draw some lines as we've seen in previous videos, some horizontal lines, um, maybe somewhere here to capture some resistance or support zones to have a general idea of some levels that you may play off. However, you do have the other alternative to actually add some studies on this chart, moving averages, opens, closes, pivot points, whatever it may be, volume. So if I go into the right-click option here on this chart, and all I have to do is select the studies. The studies parameter, you can see how many available studies are. If I scroll all the way up, you can see studies available here on this left-hand box. And as you can see, there's so many different ones that we don't really have time to go through all, but you can find your favorite studies here. You can find your favorite studies available and easily add them to this chart by selecting the Add button once you have selected that study. Now you can see these are all the studies that we have on this chart that I've hidden. So if I select this study and I unselect Hide, you'll see the actual volume weighted price average. So that's a hidden metric. Instead of a moving average, we like to use a volume weighted average price. Now, there are so many other different studies that you can see here, but the main ones we're going to be focusing on are the volume profile studies. You can also add opens, closes, highs, lows, whatever it may be. So if I unselect all these studies, I'll show you guys what this actually looks like, what this chart looks like. It may look a little convoluted. So some of these studies, if you want some explanation, we'll go through them. Let me just show you what they look like at first. So this is the actual chart with the studies on it. So if I just drop that down, give the volume a little more room, you can see it has a lot of things. Right here on the right-hand side, you have this huge volume profile in gray. This is the 5-day volume profile, which encompasses the past 5 days volume. Right here, this smaller blued out version is the current session volume profile. Then you have another gray one to the left, which is the evening session volume profile. Now, every volume profile on the left of this chart that starts on the left-hand side is a session chart, while the large one on the right is the 5-day. You can see other studies have been added to S1, pivot point, and R1. These are the pivots that you could easily add on this in the study section, but we chose to overlay it since this is not a time-based chart. We'll show you how to actually overlay different studies as well from other graphs and other charts that you may have. And you can see right here, you got some blue lines, which is the opening range, high and low based on this study right here. If I just quickly show you guys. Based on the high-low for time period extended, all it does is extends lines based on the criteria you give it. So if I say I want these lines to encompass the high and the low for the first 30 seconds of the session, it'll extend those lines. Now the VWAP here, the purple line, that's a great tool too. We use that more than moving average, but if you look over here in the actual study parameter, if I just type in M, you can see MACD, Bollinger, whatever, everything you guys want. You also have multiple different moving averages, an exponential, a Hall, a line regression, everything. And when you select one of these studies and actually add it to your arsenal, to your studies to graph, you can go into the settings and change the settings of that study to whatever you want in terms of how you want that study to be perceived. So start date and time, since we start in NYC time, I'll go 9:30. That's when this study starts. You can choose any time depending on your time zone. Subgraphs, I choose the colors of the actual line and everything, the width, whatever it is, you can hide and ignore bottom and top bands for this moving average, but they are there if you do want them. And make sure if you want the study in this actual chart, in your main chart, make sure you select chart region number 1, because if I select chart region number 2 and apply it, you'll see the VWAP actually disappears from the main graph and appears down below under the graph itself. So I need to make sure it's on chart region number 1, so it's actually in that graph. Now, when it comes to overlaying some of the studies, when it comes to the pivot, I want to actually overlay pivot points based on a time chart rather than a range chart, because that is what the pivot would be based on the most accurately. So instead of actually going into the studies right here and going down finding wherever pivot may be, so if I go pivot points variable period or pivot range, I can have either or just pivot points daily and adding them. Instead, what I'm going to do is go to study/price overlay. I'll add that. And what that does is adds a potential overlaid study from a different graph. And when I go into the settings, I want to make sure that I'm overlaying the studies from a specific chart. So if I click this area right here, you can see what number chart it's overlaying from and what kind of study it's overlaying from that chart. So again, this is the pivot point overlay. So if I go into settings, and you'll see if I click the top study to overlay, you'll see chart number 15. And this too is chart number 15. This is where I'm overlaying the study from. In the drop-down menu, you have the option to select any of the charts that you have in your Sierra charts, and then I'll select the study that's actually in that main chart, and that's going to be pivot points. And again, don't forget chart region. We're going to select number 1. So that's a cool little tool to actually overlay some of the studies. But in terms of the volume profile, let's go ahead and hide all these studies, and I'll show you the actual volume profile. So I'm going to hide this, and what we're left with is just the volume profiles on each end. Now, to actually construct these volume profiles, what we're simply going to do is, again, go into the studies, and each one is constructed differently. So you can have the 5-day on the right, or you can have the single per period. Now, if I hide that and apply, and what I'm actually going to do is select the volume by price study. This is the volume profile study. So if I add that and go into settings, you'll see it doesn't really look like much, right? These settings are pretty confusing, but it's pretty easy to maneuver through them. If you want a study on the right, if you want the volume profile study on the right, all you have to do is change just a few of these variables. Ticks per volume, you can leave that as 1 or keep it as 2. Volume graph period type. So if I want it on the right, actually, what I can do is you have multiple different settings here. If you select multiple profiles based on fixed time, that'll ensure that you have session volume profiles. So the current session and the evening session. Now, if I go down and one period based on bar count, if I select that, or if I select one period from start, one period at end of fixed time length. So if I select that, and what I do for that is select time period for length fixed time, 5 days, what you're going to see is we'll have a volume profile for 5 days in total. Now, what's important to do is actually make sure that you change the maximum volume bar width to the window width. And also, so let's see how that looks. If I apply this, everything's okay, and we apply that, and we have to make sure that right align volume bars, we're gonna have to select yes. So this is what it looks like. It comes out here, guys. We made sure it was on the right hand side rather than anywhere else. And you can see every time we move it, it just holds true to that area. We could very easily change the colors since they might be a little disgusting to look at here. If I just go back into the settings for it, and I go into the subgraphs, you can see you can highlight all the POC levels and everything if you find them. So they're in the settings somewhere here. So highlight point of control, if I select yes, then we'll see the actual POC. If I apply that, there's your POC right there, the highest area at which volume was traded. And then if I actually start moving these things around and I just gray them out rather than having them these really, really sharp colors, you can see, you can change a lot of this data right here like this. And then you can just play around with it, honestly, to some colors that you actually like. For example, if I change this to something else, it'll just, that's the same color as it was. So if I go a little darker, you can see here, I can fill them out as well, so it's not too transparent. So if I do that and then do that, you'll see it's pretty filled out. You can just change it to whatever color you guys want so it makes sense to you. And then when you're looking at the session volume profile, it's pretty much the same study except you don't align it to the right. So if I go into the studies again, and I could actually just get rid of this because this is the one that we made. It's not that important. And I unhide the actual one. That's what it looks like. Again, you can change the colors. Um, if I go into the actual sessions volume profile, you can see what the difference is. It's going to be multiple based on fixed time in terms of the volume graph period type. And then we're not aligning anything to the right. It's pretty simple. And those are some of the rest of the studies. Now, it's pretty complicated doing it this way, but there is an easy way to do this actually. If I go into tools, believe it or not, and I draw the volume profile. Now, this volume profile that you draw is just based on the period that you draw it for. So if I just grab from here to here, then it'll draw this little tiny volume profile. But if I, let me just get rid of this. If I draw the volume profile from here all the way, it'll give me both sessions, evening and night, and it'll show you that volume profile. The bad thing about this volume profile is that you have to draw it manually. But the good thing is it gives you the flexibility to draw a volume profile on whatever time session you want. And you could easily change the colors and stuff, so it's not that hard to do. Again, if I just go into tools and grab draw volume profile right here, and I draw it for, let's say, this whole time period, and then I can easily move it if I want, or I can just change the colors, right? Whatever colors you want. Let's say green, which changes the box color actually. So if I go into volume profile settings, I go into subgraphs, it's going to be the same thing as you do in terms of the other one. But again, the only thing is you have to manually draw it and then manually move it around. But it is another alternative to actually putting the volume profile in the studies, but the volume profile in the studies just keeps it there consistently. Now, if I just get rid of this guy. All right, so with that volume profile gone now, what you could do is honestly, even if you're looking at the studies here, you can easily go into study settings and identify whatever studies you do have in that chart and click on them and find those settings. So if I go into multiple volume profile, it'll open up those settings for that chart. It's a little quick shortcut. So if you guys really enjoyed this video, there's more volume profile actually trading videos on our YouTube channel, and join us to find out a lot more about this. But in terms of today's Sierra chart study video, I hope you guys enjoyed this. This was a little intro to the studies that you have access to. There's infinite studies out there on Sierra charts. Go and try them out. We don't use that many, as you can see, even though it might look a little convoluted, but this is what we got here. I hope everyone enjoyed this video, and we'll see everyone next time. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like this video, and ring that little bell to notify you when we do go live. Take care, everyone.